Many of you might know that Benjamin is actually a certificate nurse, although his level of understanding is much higher level. He's also very interested in IT and does a lot of communication for Busoga Health Forum. My name is Peter Waiswa Chove. I'm an associate professor at Mackay University, based at the School of Public Health in the College of Health Sciences. I'm also the chairperson of Busoga Health Forum. And today, we are privileged to have Dr. Flavia Matovu Chiwewa. Dr. Flavia is well known to many of you. She's a senior scientist at MUCHO, the Mackay University Johns Hopkins collaboration. She's also a lecturer at the School of Public Health and also in the College of Health Sciences. Dr. Flavia is an epidemiologist with a lot of interest in ending HIV, especially finding solutions. She's done many studies, including she was the principal investigator of a microbial drug that was trying to look at whether microbicides would stop HIV transmission. But most importantly today, she's coming back here to Busoga Health Forum to speak to us about the Purpose 1 study, which is the first phase 3 HIV prevention trial here at Benjamin Road Trail to show zero infections. And Dr. Flavia will be telling us what is a phase 3 and why this is important. And so thank you for coming. I would like to invite Dr. Flavia in maybe, I don't know how much time you need, but if you took like 30, 40 minutes to present, and then we can get this to be followed by a discussion. Dr. Flavia, thank you for always being at Busoga Health Forum. And you, through this, you reach out to members of the medical fraternity, but I'm sure some members of the public. Over to you, Flavia. Dr. Flavia, you on mute?
Okay. Thank you so much, Professor Waiswa, and good evening, everyone. Thank you for the interest in hearing more about the Purpose 1 trial. I know there's a lot of information in the media already, but thank you for the interest to get the details about this study. Yes, so we first obtained results from this study in June this year. It was a press release by Gilead Sciences. And thereafter, we got more detailed results at AIDS 2024 in Munich, Germany, on the 24th of July this year. And on that very day, we published the work in the New England Journal of Medicine. And I'm privileged to be the senior author for this work. So the background to the Purpose 1 study is that we have lots of HIV infections in sub-Saharan Africa, where we are. And most of the infections are occurring in young women. Over 60% of the infections, the new infections are occurring in women. And UNAIDS estimated that in 2022, over 3,000 new infections were occurring per week. This has gone up to 4,000 infections per week in the 15 to 24 age bracket, the group that we researched in. So we've had PrEP for quite some time. Since 2012, the Food and Drug Administration licensed PrEP, and since then, over 6 million people have benefited from PrEP. But for women in particular, especially the young ones, the uptake, adherence, and persistence has remained suboptimal, very low. You find that in our PrEP program, we began giving out PrEP in Uganda in 2017, 2018. But when you look at the Ministry of Health data, you'll notice that for every 10 individuals who come for PrEP, by about month 3, you only have 2 people returning. Month 6, you have like 1 person. By 1 year, none of the people who started is still on PrEP. Very few people will be on PrEP. So there are challenges with taking a daily pill, including stigma, including the pill burden, side effects, and so on. So we set out to conduct the Purpose 1 study to look at safety and efficacy of a twice-yearly injection called Lenacapavir and a smaller tablet called FTAF for HIV prevention among cisgender women. So that is the full title of the study. Purpose 1 stands for Phase 3 study of Lenacapavir for PrEP and Discovery, the smaller tablet FTAF for PrEP in adolescent girls and young women. It's a Phase 3 study. Phase 3 means that we've already gone through the laboratory phase where we have safety data from animals, and then we go to Phase 1 where we have a smaller group of people and we're looking at whether the drug is safe. Phase 2, you do in a relatively larger group, and then you look at whether it is still safe, but also some indication of will it work work for the intention it is meant to be. And then Phase 3 is large scale, whereby you are now looking at effectiveness or efficacy. So Purpose 1 is a Phase 3 study, double-blinded in a clinical trial to avoid bias. The investigator would not know what product the research participant is on, and so the participant shouldn't know what they are on. So you minimize bias when you're assessing your outcomes. And then multi-center means that we conducted the study in different sites. We had 28 sites in total, 25 in South Africa and 3 in Uganda, more in South Africa because they have a higher burden of HIV. And then it was a randomized trial. It was by chance that someone gets onto either the Lenacapavir or the FTAF Discovery, or is given the standard of care, which is a FTDF or Truvada. So we looked at safety and efficacy of the injection, and then also the FTAF for PrEP in addition to background HIV incidence, as we shall see. And the study is being sponsored by Gilead Sciences, based in California, San Francisco. So 2 products were selected upon: the injection, Lenacapavir. It's already been used for treatment in heavily treatment-experienced individuals who have multi-drug resistance. So if someone has failed on all the regimens, Lenacapavir has been shown to work. It was approved by the Food and Drug Administration in 2022, December. It's currently available in the Western world. It is highly potent, and the strength of this drug, the properties that make it highly potent, is because it works at multiple stages of the HIV-1 life cycle. Unlike most drugs that may act at one stage, such that if the infection has gone through, then someone can get infected. But here, if it misses at one point, it can catch the HIV before it just enters the DNA. And it has a very long half-life of 6 months, making it feasible for a twice-yearly subcutaneous injection. And then FTAF is a smaller form of Tenofovir, smaller than FTDF, and it has more plasma stability. It stays in the blood for a longer time, and it's taken up more rapidly in the cells, more than TDF, which circulates in the plasma. And therefore, FTAF has less side effects because it goes into the cells, and it's a smaller dose compared to FTDF, which is a bigger dose. And FTDF, which is the currently available oral PrEP, it has more side effects because it hangs around in the plasma, and the dose is also high, about 300 milligrams compared to 25 milligrams of FTAF. So FTAF was already licensed in 2019. The results came out in July 2019 in Mexico, and by the end of the year, the FDA had approved FTAF for PrEP in men who have sex with men. And when Gilead filed for licensure of FTAF for both men and women, the FDA declined to approve FTAF for women because women are different from men. Women get pregnant, women use contraception. There's no data on all those aspects. and importantly, the safety on the child, the unborn child, and also safety on children who are breastfeeding. So they advise that Gilead goes back and conducts a study of FTAF specifically for women. So the two interventions, Lenacapavir and FTAF, were included in this design at the same time, with FTDF as the comparison group, in addition to HIV background incidence. So the objectives, primarily, we set out to find out whether the injection, Lenacapavir, works to prevent HIV in young women, but also if FTAF works to prevent HIV. So there were two investigational agents, Lenacapavir injection 6 monthly, and then FTAF taken once a day. And then we had other objectives, wanted to see if FTAF works to prevent HIV infection. How does it compare with the standard of care, which is FTDF or Truvada, that's already available in the clinics? And then also if FTAF, the smaller tablet of Tenofovir, if it works to prevent HIV, also how does it compare with FTDF? And then wanted also to continue studying the safety, even if at the earlier phases of the study, we look at safety, even at phase 3, even beyond phase 3, like phase 4 studies, those marketing studies, you still look at safety of a given product. So we still wanted to know Lenacapavir, FTAF, and FTDF, and if it will tolerate young women. So this slide shows the number of sites, 25 sites in South Africa, and then 3 sites in Uganda. In Uganda, we conducted the study at Mityana under Moody Research Collaboration, who are the coordinating institution, but with the implementing site in Mityana. And then in Masaka, we have the African Medical and Behavioral Sciences Organization in Kalisizo, and then we have the Kalangala site that is under Makerere University, and the study is hosted by IAVI, with participants strictly coming from the islands, Kalangala. Professor Noah is the site PI for Kalangala, and then Dr. Chigozi, site PI for AMSO, Masaka, and I'm the PI for Mityana, as well as the overall national PI for the study. So this is the design. We had different phases. We had the incidence phase. If you can see here, the cross-sectional incidence phase. We included this phase, unlike most trials, because we are having 3 products, 2 investigational, Lenacapavir and FTAF, with a standard of care, FTDF, and they were all active products. Unlike prior studies whereby we would have, let me say we did a study of the vaginal ring. You have one ring has the dapivrin, and then the other doesn't have. So you don't need to know the background HIV incidence in an area. But here, because we had all the agents were active, should the participants adhere to all the products, then you will see very few infections or no infections, and then you cannot tell whether your product worked to prevent HIV or whether you studied a population that was not at risk of getting, would come in, you screened them for HIV, and then those who were positive went ahead and established whether there were recent infections or if there were long-term infections. And in the recent infections, were able to give us the answer of what is the incidence of HIV in an area, how many new infections were occurring in that area based on the recency assays. We use more sophisticated assays than what we have already here, the Asante. So we use the SEDIA assay, which is a newer form. More ministries using. And then, so the women were randomized to either arm, but because we were blinded, so one, if you went into the Lenacapavir arm, you also had to take one of the tablets, but a placebo arm, a placebo product. So if you're in Len, so you'd either get your injection, which has Len, but you don't know whether it's Len, we also don't know. And then you'd take an oral tablet, either FTAF or FTDF. If you're randomized to active FTAF, then you'd have an injection that is a placebo. If you're randomized to FTDF, then you have an injection that is also placebo. So the women were either on an injection and FTAF, and a placebo of a smaller tablet, or an injection and a FTDF. And follow them at given interval, tablets being
Fabio, if you could
given
speak up a
and
bit.
being taken every day.
Dr. Fabio,
Oh,
if you could speak
really?
up a bit.
Hello?
And also, your internet is fluctuating also. I hope it's not mine. Okay.
Is it better now?
Yeah.
Okay. So I can explain this again because it's a very important slide. So we had 3 phases of the study. We had the cross-sectional incidence phase, we had the randomized phase, and now we are in the open label extension phase, which I don't show here. So for the incidence phase, maybe I take off my video to increase the bandwidth. So for the incidence phase, we were specifically interested in knowing how many new infections were occurring in that area where the women are coming from. And the reason is, if you are conducting a study whereby you have all your investigational agents active, where there's no placebo. I gave an example of the Aspire study where we were investigating a dapivirine ring, whether it works to prevent HIV. And because there was no standard of care by then, there was no Truvada, so just would randomize women to either getting a ring that has the dapivirine or one that has placebo. It was very easy, and then you would see how many infections are occurring in the placebo arm and the active arm. But here we are having all the agents active because already we have Truvada as standard of care. We cannot give placebo anymore for PrEP trials. So it was very important that we look at background HIV incidence that occurs in a given area. So when women would come in to be screened to take part in the study, we would test them for HIV. And then among those who are positive, would do other tests that can tell whether someone is recently infected or if they've been infected long term. And the recent infections would enable us to know what the background HIV incidence is in that area. So following the incidence phase, women who were negative were randomized to either going on to Lenacapavir active or FTAF active or FTDF active. So if you're on active Lenacapavir, then you'd have to be on a placebo of either FTAF or FTDF. If you're on active FTAF, then you have to be on a placebo of Lenacapavir. If you're on active FTDF, again, you'd be on placebo of Lenacapavir. So we would know that this person is either on Lenacapavir or on FTAF, either Lenacapavir or FTDF. But we did not know exactly what they were on. We were blinded to minimize bias. And then would have the injections administered every 6 months. And the oral tablets were supposed to be taken every day. And women would come in for their refills at a quarterly basis. So the eligibility criteria for someone to qualify to be in Purpose 1 at screening, they had to be 16 to 25 years. They had to be sexually active, which we defined as having 2 or more episodes of sexual intercourse in the last 3 months. They had to be HIV negative. They shouldn't have tested in the previous 3 months. Remember, we had a criterion establishing HIV incidence, background HIV incidence, because if someone has already tested and they know they are negative, then we'll not be able to establish the new infections in a given area. And they shouldn't have been on PrEP in the preceding 3 months, because if you're on PrEP, already your risk is very low. You already know you have your risk perception, and then you are not at risk anymore because you have a solution to your problem. And then you shouldn't be pregnant or breastfeeding at that time when they were getting enrolled into the study. So we followed up these women at different intervals. That is the schedule. You'd come at screening for incidence, then you are screened for enrollment, and then you are enrolled. Then you come at week 4, week 8, week 13, and thereafter every 13 weeks, but with injections given at a semi-annual interval. So women were supposed to take their pills every day, and they were given adherence counseling accordingly. We tested for HIV at every visit, even if it wasn't a scheduled visit, because these were high-risk young girls. If you came in for contraception, we could still take advantage of that and still find out whether you are still okay. And then we did pregnancy testing and STI testing at every visit, and we specifically looked at gonorrhea, chlamydia, T. vaginalis and syphilis at those intervals, and we provided treatment for those who needed it. And we defined adherence to the injection as someone coming in on time for their LEN. The window was a week before, a week after. And then for the oral formulations, adherence was measured using drug levels. We did a random sample of 10% of the visits among the women. And then we provided counseling per national PrEP guidelines in each country. And contraception wasn't required, but we provided it for those who desired not to get pregnant. So what was unique about Purpose 1 is if someone desires to get pregnant, they were free to get pregnant, unlike other PrEP trials where we would hold study product and then only resume after someone has completed breastfeeding. But for Purpose 1, we had a pregnancy component. If someone got pregnant, you consent to continue on the product, and then we were able also to gather data at the same time on the safety of the products in pregnancy. As standard of care, we provided condoms, either female or male condoms, and also lubricants, because most of these girls are really into commercial sex. And then those who acquired HIV during follow-up or even at screening were obliged to refer them to local HIV care. And we made sure that they initiated ART and followed them up until they suppressed the HIV. So these are the results. From August 30th, 2021 to 2 years later, we screened over 8,000 women. The HIV prevalence at baseline was 6.2%, and 18% of the infections were classified as recent. There were 7 baseline infections. These were infections at enrollment. Someone comes in per rapid test, they were negative, but then by week 4, positive. And when we went back to their samples, they actually had a virus in their blood at baseline. At that time, they were randomized into the study. And then under modified treatment, intention to treat, we looked at how many infections occurred prospectively. So those were the number of people, women randomized in the different groups. As you saw, we had a ratio of 2 to 2 to 1. So that also is replicated in the enrollments. So over 2,000 in Lenacapavir, over 2,000 in FTAF, and about 1,000 in the FTDF group. And this slide shows who we enrolled. Very young girls, of course, the criteria was 16 to 18. And as you can see, very few girls were below the age of 18. And for Uganda in particular, the IRB, UVR, required us not to enroll women who are not emancipated, minors who are not emancipated. So we got very few emancipated minors. And then the median age was 21. And as you can see, most of the girls were not married, only 1.2, around 1.2 per group were married. They were also not living with partners. Very few are living with their partners, about 6 to 7%, meaning that they were single and in multiple relationships, barmaids, and so on. So as you can see, the prevalence of STIs at baseline was very high. About 25% is very high for chlamydia. And we know the complications that chlamydia has, especially in young girls, and putting them at risk of infertility later on in life. Gonorrhea is about 8 to 9%, and trick about the same. A very lower prevalence for syphilis, but the concern is mainly around the other STIs, especially chlamydia. And even throughout the study, we saw very high incidence of STIs, showing that these were very high-risk young girls. And we really need a solution very soon. So surprisingly, only 6.7%, around 6% had ever used PrEP, despite being at very high risk. Most of them had never used PrEP before, but they were testing. About 80% had any prior testing. So these are the results. There were a total of 55 infections, incident infections. There were none in the Lenacapavir group. There were 39 in the FTAF group and 16 in the standard of care group, FTDF group. So the 0 infections translated into 100% protection and also 100% superiority to FTDF, because that was our secondary objective, to see whether the Lenacapavir was superior to FTDF. So young women on FTAF got infections at the same rate. We shall see the graphs at the same rate, not different, at a rate not different from the rate of those who were not on PrEP, the background HIV incidence. And FTAF protected those who took it from HIV. Again, we shall see. We did a case control analysis, and those who were not using their product were more likely to have gotten infected. And other products, LEN, FTAF, and FTDF were safe and they were well tolerated. And many women reported injection site reactions, including the pain as expected, but the frequency diminished with subsequent injections. And this is consistent with what we saw for the treatment trials. So this figure shows the incidence of HIV. There were 0 infections in the Lenacapavir group. We see the incidence is about 2 in the FTAF group, about 1.7 FTDF group, and 2.4 background HIV incidence, the infections at baseline. And these are not really different. The incidence of FTAF was not different from that of background HIV incidence. So when you look at this graph, we're looking at the level of protection of LEN, and LEN offered 100% protection compared to background HIV incidence. And FTAF was not different from background HIV incidence. If you look at the incidence rate ratio, you see that the 95% confidence interval crosses 1. And then the secondary objective of LEN being superior, yes, it was 100% superior to FTDF. And again, FTAF was not different from FTDF. As you can see, again, the incident rate ratio, 95% confidence interval includes 1. And therefore, FTAF was not different from FTDF. The girls did not adhere to the oral formulations. So we looked at adherence, trying to explain our findings. We looked at adherence. LEN adherence, as we said, was defined as receiving your injection on time. And we had over 90% of the girls receive their injections on time at the follow-up visits, 26, 52. And then also we looked at FTAF, FTDF. We looked at the tenofovir diphosphate levels in the dried blood spots. So the red bar, the red part of the bar graph shows the proportion of women with low adherence to FTAF or FTDF. As you see, low adherence was defined as taking less than 2 doses per week. And then medium adherence represented by the yellow portion, 2 or 3 doses per week. And then high adherence represented by the green portion, over 4 doses, 4 or more doses per week. And as you can see, the red part of the bar chart, you can see that it goes on increasing. So more people are taking less than 2 doses as time goes on. So the proportion that is adherent went reducing. Those who are taking 4 more doses reduced with time. And this is also consistent with what we've seen for all prior studies. People start off very well, and then they get either fatigued or they get misconceptions from other people, and then they stop taking, the peer pressure and so on. They stop taking, and they come for other benefits within the study. But importantly, this shows that realistically, it's not very easy to be on an oral product every day. And yet they remained at high risk because we saw the number of STIs were really high during the study. So again, we looked at the people who seroconverted, and we did a case control analysis for the women who are on FTAF. So we matched, when someone would seroconvert, we looked at who else has come at that visit. So we matched them on the visit date, And then we also looked at the age, and also we looked at where they are coming from, the site, and having an STI at that visit. And we saw that for the women who had adherence, they were less likely to get infected, but those who were not adhering had higher chances of getting HIV infection. And this means that the non-adherence to these oral formulations was totally responsible, not totally, but highly responsible for the infections that we see. We have some data for CROI next year to explain the different HIV infections that occurred, whether it was resistance to the drug or whether it was non-adherence to the drug, but majorly it's always non-adherence. So we had an objective on safety, and this was showing the different adverse events that occurred in the study. And as you can see, there was no difference in adverse events. Majority were grade 2 or less, and there were very few serious adverse events, about 2 to 4%. So, and these were very common adverse events. Headache, it will occur even when someone is not in a study. UTI, definitely not related. STIs, nausea, vomiting. And also we looked at some lab abnormalities. So there's nothing unexpected that we saw in the study, and they were all well balanced. So we also looked at pregnancy. Like I said, we did not hold product for women who got pregnant. They signed a separate consent and agreed to continue on product, and the women and their participants were both research participants in the study. So we got 5-10 pregnancies by then, and to note that 80% of these pregnancies came from the 3 sites in Uganda, and 20% came from the 25 sites in South Africa. Some who had repeat pregnancies and multiple pregnancies. So you see there were more pregnancies than the participants. 5-10 pregnancies among 487 participants because of the repeat pregnancies and the multiple pregnancies. So that's the distribution of the pregnancies among the different study groups. And what we concluded was that LEN, FTAF, and FTDF were all safe and well tolerated in pregnant women. And no infections, consistent with the general results, no infections occurred among pregnant women who were assigned to Lenacapavir, but there were 4 infections in the FTAF group and 1 infection in the FTDF group. And this shows that women continue to be at risk of HIV when they are pregnant and potentially can infect their children. So Lenacapavir will go a long way in eliminating mother-to-child transmission of HIV if it can be accessed by this very population. So in summary, 0 women receiving the twice-yearly Lenacapavir injection acquired HIV in the PURPOSE 1 study. LEN was superior to FTDF, which is the current standard of care in preventing HIV, and this twice-yearly choice could overcome some of the adherence and persistence challenges we have seen among especially young women, and to significantly contribute to reducing HIV infections in women, and not only in sub-Saharan Africa, but also globally. We studied women here because that's where the burden is, but everyone will benefit, male and female, resource-limited setting, and Western world. Anyone who is at risk will benefit from this product. We noted that adherence to the oral formulations, FTAF or Discovery, and FTDF was, and protection to FTAF was strongly associated with adherence. You don't take something, it can't work for you. And this novel design creates a path forward for future PrEP options for HIV or vaccine trials, because for all other studies, we've been excluding, first of all, women who intend to get pregnant. Here we included them. And then they continued on product when they got pregnant. We got data for adolescent girls at the same time. Usually we do the studies in adults 18 and above, but here adolescents contributed to this study, and also children and the women and their children contributed to the data. Because typically we've been having, you do a study and then afterwards you start doing other studies to look at safety of the product in women, safety of the product in those who are breastfeeding, who are pregnant, in adolescents. So this has saved us a lot of time and resources. We're able to combine the the different questions in one design, and we've been able to provide answers to these populations. At that first time, we're having efficacy data for Lenacapavir in the larger group. So currently, per protocol, we had an open label extension phase, and the women have all been rolled over to the open label extension phase. They've been offered Lenacapavir. The acceptance has been very, very high, almost 100% for the Ugandan sites and about 90% for the South African sites. And we are very happy that the sponsor from the initial version of the protocol, they had already provided posterior access to the girls who take part in the study. They will be on Lenacapavir indefinitely until it's available in Uganda and South Africa. So for a product to be licensed, you need evidence from more than one source. So Gilead conducted 2 efficacy studies in parallel. There's Purpose 1 and Purpose 2. Purpose 2 results were presented this year at the HIV R4P conference in Peru, and they're very consistent with what we see in Purpose 1. There were 2 infections, and we are still looking at what happened. Probably they came late, but we presented so we did not look at it into efficacy of 96%, which is still very high. It's almost 100%. So currently, the sponsor is working on filing for licensure with the FDA. By the end of this year, the dossier will be in, and we hope to have the FDA audits at the different sites that will be selected early next year. And in the meantime, Gilead has already gone into agreement with 6 generic drug manufacturers to be able to expedite access to LEN in resource-limited settings. Because if you are to provide the brand drug to everyone, it's very expensive. It's very expensive to conduct clinical trials, and being able to put a cost to the brand drug will be very expensive. So they're going to work with the 6 generic manufacturers to be able to provide this drug at a lower cost, especially to high incidence resource limited settings. But in the meantime, already they passed a statement last month committing to providing the brand drug to 18 countries, including Uganda, as the drug manufacturers work around the licenses and coming up with a drug. So they'll be able to provide the brand version at a low cost to 18 countries, including Uganda. So we need really to currently advocate for access, because to have impact, you need a product that works. Already we've proven it works, but it has to be accessed by people for us to see it having impact on what it's supposed to do, and in this case, on HIV incidence. So I want to acknowledge everyone, the colleagues at different sites in Uganda and South Africa, our participants, their families and communities, our staff, our study teams, and then also our regulators, UVRI, REC, and the UNCST, our Community Advisory Board, and then also the Global Community Advisory Group. Thank you so much.
Wow, thank you so much, Dr. Favia. Members, if you have a question, please, or a comment, you can write in the chat, or you can raise up your hand. I think very interesting results. And one incident one that Uganda, which had even fewer sites, only 3, compared to South Africa, which had 25, had 80% of the pregnancies. That is interesting. I don't know that Flavia has an explanation for that. So Flavia, I'll ask a few questions then as I wait for people to ask questions. One, why was it in adolescent girls and not the other groups? And are these results, can they be generalized to which groups can these results be generalized? Could we say this work for women? And 2, is there any reason why the drug might not work in men, although you've not tested it in men? Would it still prevent infection? Also, I think for the others you've discussed. So, but assuming the drug gets registered, what would be what would the program look like? Who would be eligible to take the drug? And would the people, if they took it, do they need to take protection for some time before they are safe from having, being safe from infection? And also, it is also interesting that a drug which is not a vaccine, so I'm asking many questions. Why does a drug which is not a vaccine work like a vaccine for that long? I mean, if you're just having 2 doses a year, does it last that long in the blood to be able to be effective? These are some of the questions that I would like you to respond to, and then I'll invite, of course, other people to ask questions. Over to you, Flavia.
Okay, thank you so much, Professor Waiswa. I'll go in order of the way you asked the questions. So pregnancy, Uganda, 80% of the 5-10 pregnancies, and in South Africa, 20%. In Uganda, we've been known to have the second highest fertility rate. There's a lot of fertility desire here, low contraceptive usage. And this is replicated in this study. When we conducted the earlier studies, we used to exclude women who had intention to get pregnant for the duration of the study. So this study is about 5-6 years. So you tell an 18-year-old that you shouldn't get pregnant, or 25-year-old shouldn't get pregnant in the next 5 years. They will ask you, when do you expect me to get pregnant? So many of them would not join the study. And then even during the study, we had so many pregnancies. So for a protocol whereby we waived that criteria, this was really expected. And this is what we see in Uganda. You can walk in South Africa or other countries and you hardly see a pregnant person. But on the streets of Uganda, you see very many people. I think it's about the desires, very, very high desire to get pregnant, and also the low usage of contraception. But this is the picture. Uganda is known for having a high fertility rate. And then why adolescent girls and young women? It's where there's higher burden or higher incidence. And that's where you can do your study. So if we are going to look at older women, that older women don't get infected, or that men in Uganda don't get infected, but the burden is highest in these young girls. So if you research in a population whereby the incidence or the problem is higher, then you're more likely to get an answer to your question faster. Instead of looking at a low risk population, you'll be able, you may find your answer, but it may take you like 10 years to get 55 older women seroconvert like we saw here, how we got those women within a very short time. So it's about where the burden is and who will give you an answer faster than the other. If you're looking at burden of HIV in men, we conducted the PURPOSE 2 study in the Western world. South Africa contributed also, but here we couldn't because we didn't have data, but also our regulations here, it would be a bit tricky. So because MSMs have higher incidence of HIV, higher burden of HIV, so PURPOSE 2 was conducted in men. So you look at where the problem is. If you're going to conduct an anti-malarial study, you want to look at treatment of malaria, you conduct it in Uganda and not in the US or wherever. So it's about where the problem is and which population will answer your study question first. So you asked about men, will it still work? Yeah, it will still work because everyone is at risk, but the issue was who can answer our question. And like I've said, that's why for here we came for women, not only women, but younger girls. For all our studies that we've conducted, we see that we used to include women 18 to 45, but you find that the incidence in those girls below 25 is very, very high compared to the older women for different reasons. They are vulnerable. They don't have jobs, socioeconomically they're disadvantaged, culturally they're disadvantaged. Even within relationships, the power dynamics, the man can decide to use a condom or not, the girl may have little say. And most of these girls are they're working in bars, they're working in shamba and farms. We have some factory in Mitiana in Mobende, whereby the girls sell those energy drinks. And the more energy drinks you sell, it's the more money they give you. So you're going to sell to these men, and what will happen? Because they get drunk, they are sort of alcohol, and also stimulating appetite for men. So what happens after you have sold those tots? Even within bars, they are not paid. They are given an address. So the more you sell, the more beers you sell, the more commission that you will get. So you get this man drunk, and then what happens next? Some don't want to use condoms. So they're really vulnerable girls, and that's why the burden is very high in those areas. I mean, in that age group. So it's about the risk that they have, but everyone can benefit from a given product, just that we select according to risk and who can answer our question faster than the other. So you also asked if registered, what would the program look like? So again, after these interventions have worked, we continue to answer many questions about implementation research questions. So the product can work, but then it can't be taken up. The product may work, but it may not reach the people. So what is the delivery mechanism like? Can the health workers handle this? Where is it best delivered? In facilities, in people's homes, in ART clinics? So a lot of questions need to be answered, but in the meantime, as the sponsor registers the product in the different countries, a Ministry of Health will make the final decision on where they want the product to be, as we still answer more questions to facilitate uptake. But we are not very sure when this will happen, because, as you know, for our countries, we depend on donors, unlike South Africa, whereby the government puts in money to make sure that their people access these products quickly. So now it's up to Ministry of Health after the registration to see who is going to fund, who is going to pay for the Lenacapavir. So then you asked whether would they need to take protection for some time? Yeah, so I didn't go into the details, but what we did is, if when someone came for the baseline visit, the randomization visit, we gave them oral Lenacapavir or placebo for 2 days, because that's the time the injection takes to build up in the body for you to have enough drug protection. So within 2 days, then you are sure that you have enough protection to be able to rely on the Lenacapavir alone. And then you said, why does it work like a vaccine? 2 doses a year. Yeah, so the way this drug works, when you're injected subcutaneously, it forms a depot under your skin. And then from that depot, which may be palpable or not, the drug is released slowly. A depot is like a nodule. So the drug gets in there, and then it's released slowly over a long period of time, over 6 months. It gets into your circulation, and then it works to prevent HIV. So someone said that it's the closest we have to a vaccine. It's not a vaccine, because a vaccine will induce an immune response that gives you protection. This one is the drug itself that is protecting you. So it's different from a vaccine. But like someone said, it's the closest we have now to a vaccine. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Flavia. So the number of questions in the chat, I'm going to read them, and you can take note. There is Atkonda Mchunguzi. Did you collect data on condomless sexual intercourse among study participants? What stands out from that data? And she has another question. What HIV prevention package options were offered to the study participants other than IMP/study drugs? There's also a question from Herbert Okol, and he's asking, is the Lenacapavir PrEP already licensed, or we are yet to wait for other comparison trial in Peru? think you answered that, but you can emphasize. Then Geoffrey Zamu is asking, the intervention is timely since the majority of HIV transmission in Uganda occurs among females between 15 and 24 years. However, their key drivers and are believed to be the key drivers are believed to be men. How could we address this, the stigma of accessing PrEP and PEP and handle the men who are the drivers in high prevalence in our country? Then Mutongole, so I'm reading several so that you see how to handle them, is asking any comparative studies in efficacy between Lenacapavir and the Cabotegravir injections. Then Dennis is asking, the challenge is that most likely those men who are drivers, okay, was making a comment, not, yeah, those are the questions so far. Members, if you have a question and you would like to vocalize, please put up your hand. Flavia, you can respond to those ones for now.
Okay. Yes, so the first question was data on condomless sexual intercourse. Yes, so we had what we call the computer-assisted self-interviews, whereby the participants would come in, we provide them with privacy in a room, give them a computer, the questions are translated, and then they are able to answer the questions objectively without any bias. And we were asking about condom use, how many times they're having sex a day and so on. But that information is alarming. Someone telling you they're having 10 partners in a day, they can't even count the number of sex because they have, I think, several rounds with one person. So we collected that information, and then also we collected information on whom you use condoms with and whom you don't. Most of them, they don't use condoms with casual partners, but they have someone who they consider as a primary partner. And then also, if someone is paying more money, then they go condomless. They call it chitwe, but as in no condom. It's called chitwe. So it was there. We collected that data, and we are yet to relate it to the primary objectives. But yes, many of the girls do not use condoms consistently. And then the HIV prevention package, as displayed on the slide here, we gave counseling. We provided male condoms, all female condoms, and we tested for HIV and also provided risk reduction counseling. Some of them were able to change after several or a number of counseling sessions, but some of them it was beyond their control. The risk continues, but we provided a standard of care package for HIV prevention. And then is it licensed? Like I said, it's not yet licensed. The sponsor is in the process of filing for licensure. That dossier will be submitted by the end of this year, and then we shall be audited early next year, and probably mid-year we may have the FDA license this product. And then 15 to 25-year-old men are the drivers, and they don't want to take PrEP because of stigma. That is very true, because the infections are coming from men. And what we also noticed from this study and a prior study where we're looking at characterizing the infections in Mityana and Hoima, the girls who are who had recent infection, you find that they're in the same location, meaning that the same people have infected them. Some may even be relatives, cousins, or sisters, meaning that the same men are going around infecting more than one girl. So how do we deal? And they don't want to seek either treatment or prevention measures. But surprisingly, for this injection, the interest so far has been more from men. You don't know how many calls I have received from very responsible men who want to access the injection now. You're like, it's not yet licensed. Can't I get it from the US? I can buy it. So we hope that with this long-term intervention, more men will be able to take up the method, because they don't, there will be no stigma. Actually, no one will know that you've gotten your injection. You come to the clinic or wherever, your wife or your family will not know that you got a Lenacapavir injection, and you don't need to come back in the next 6 months. So this is going to overcome some of these challenges like stigma, because of the non-dependence. You don't need to take it every day, and it also has very minimal side effects. So probably we shall have more men take up the injection, but also we have on-demand PrEP right now. I don't know whether you know about on-demand PrEP, whereby you take, because we give PrEP every day, take every day consistently when you're at risk. So on-demand PrEP is a newer strategy, and men have taken it up more than women, whereby if you know you're at risk, you take your doses of PrEP before, during and after. Maybe it's a weekend, take your doses 2 days before, and then meet someone, and then cover yourself again, and then you don't need to be on PrEP again. So you're taking it when you need it. It's on demand. Men have been the majority of the higher proportion of uptake has been among men, because I think they're in control of their lives. They know, I'm going in for this, I'm at risk, and like women, whereby they are vulnerable, the man comes, and then they have no say, they are at risk at any time. So we hope that in addition to on-demand PrEP, the injection can also further reduce the infections that are occurring in men. And we are seeing that men are infecting more than one woman because of the multiple current relationship that they engage in. So someone asked a very good study about Len and Cab, and not yet, but as we know, they are manufactured by different pharma. Not very easy to have these two, I think, compared head on, but we have studies from Cab separate and studies from Len separate. We saw that Len is superior 100% to FTDF, while cabotegravir was not 100% superior to FTDF. So we may not be able to compare head on, but it's a very good question. It would be a very interesting one.
Thank you, Flavia. Benjamin, if you could share the CPD link, people asking. And Agnes, Belinda, let's have like 2-3 questions, then we can wrap up this one.
Thank
Agnes?
you, Professor. Hello, Dr. Flavia. Very good to hear this presentation over and over again. We know that Len is discreet and it gives women more choices. The question I want to put to you, do you think that in the future, when we are able to afford Len in Uganda, married women will still have to seek permission from their partners to get the Len injection, just like they do for contraception?
Thank you. Grace Kadondi? And if there's anybody with a question, please, your hand right now. Otherwise, you can keep it down forever. Until next time. Grace?
Okay, I'm here now. Thank you. Thank you, Professor Waiswa and the other presenters. Sorry, I came in a bit late, but this is a concern about a video clip that was on media of like men who are infected and they go around picking girls from, mostly university, but I believe they could even pick adolescents or younger girls. And they were really doing it. I don't remember quite well but I'm sure some people here could have seen that clip. It was such a dangerous state of like people who are intentionally actually spreading the HIV. So like us as health workers, how would we be able to intervene in such situations? Thank you.
Thank you, Grace. You can put your hand down. Anybody else with a question? Otherwise, we are going to be wrapping up. I'm not seeing any question. Flavia, maybe I'll ask a question so that you answer those questions with this one. I think I'm just thinking that you need a lot of programming research going forward. Maybe you could even start writing a research agenda. For instance, as I asked before, what would the program look like? In other words, do we invite all sexual active people to get this every 6 months, like just like like we do for contraception? But also the implication of people feeling safe that they can't get HIV, so they can throw away condoms, and yet there is a risk of getting pregnant, which is also an issue. So how to get the benefit of both prevent HIV? So we need research around integrating with programs like family planning. And we also in family planning, we have self-injection. So could this be a self-injection option? I think there are various models that it could be delivered. I think those are, for me, the questions, and you can respond those. And then anything you want to tell us in the closing. Over to you.
Okay, thank you so much, Professor Waiswa. So Belinda asked about women needing permission from their partners, like they do for contraception, since LEN is discreet. So if you look at family planning, the patterns again, women going for more discreet options like DMPA and implants, because most of the partners are not in agreement. Many of the partners may want children, and the women really feel that they need a break or they are not yet ready. So this is one of the advantages of Lenacapavir being discreet compared to the oral formulations. And to answer your question more directly, I think many women go on to contraception or use PrEP without needing permission, because you're actually protecting yourself from the risk that your partner may be putting you at. And if you consult them, then some sort of violence always erupts, even within studies. If they find out that they're in a PrEP study, they're like, oh, so are you the one going out, or you think I'm messing around? You think I'm putting you at risk? So a discrete method goes a long way in solving some of those issues about a disclosure, and someone can get their method in a discrete way without needing to consult a partner. But also it depends on the relationship and how effective the communication is between the two parties. And then the clip of men picking young girls intentionally and spreading HIV, I think that goes to educating our young girls and empowering them. I know that there should be a law. There are laws about minors and so on, but we know that these things happen, and we need to, as much as talk to the men, but also empower girls, have them in school, educate them, empower them to value themselves and look ahead towards their future instead of looking at the immediate gratification. So I didn't see the clip, but more of the education needs to go towards the women, as much as we need to also take action against men who may be engaging in sex with very young girls who are below age. And Dr. Waiswa, Professor, what you said about the program, what it would look like currently for PrEP, unlike other countries like Kenya, whereby anyone can access PrEP, here we have a criteria, and we look at some key populations like commercial sex workers, people in discordant relationships, wives to truck drivers or border men, or people in multiple concurrent relationships and so on. So again, it will go back to ministry, because I'm seeing very, very decent people in quotes who are yearning for LEN currently. So maybe that may be waived. So because you may think someone is not at risk, and yet for themselves, perceive themselves to be at risk, and they're not in any of that criteria. And people need to be given access to the product if they feel that they're at risk, even if they do not fall within the Ministry of Health criteria. And yes, we need more studies on that. And concern about risk disinhibition, people forgetting about STIs, about pregnancy, because condoms can prevent HIV, other STIs, pregnancy, and so on. And yet for LEN, it will only be able to protect against HIV. So these are the questions that, again, we may need to ask. Someone comes in, will they choose condoms after explaining to them that the LEN can't protect them from HIV, hepatitis B, and so on? And then also, how do we integrate with the family planning clinics? Can people self-inject themselves? Should we deliver from home? Should we deliver from pharmacies? And so on. Yeah, so a lot of programming needs to be done. I agree. And the work has just started. There's a lot that we need to learn from LEN, and also borrow a leaf from family planning and from other interventions that have worked before and strategies that we have employed. So my closing remarks is this is a new intervention. We already have what we know is a standard of care, ABC. Those who can abstain, like the young people. Being faithful, very important. Condoms, gold standard. If you use them consistently, you won't get HIV, you won't get hepatitis B, you will not get other STIs, you will not get pregnant. So it's still recommended, but again, we see that we are seeing many infections, new infections happening, especially in the rural towns, even with all those measures in place and messages around. So meaning that there are people who are not able to again use condoms or be faithful or abstain. And we have oral PrEP, which has all the challenges of stigma, adherence, and so on. So the new formulation is meant for those who are not able to abstain, not able to use condoms, not able to be faithful, and therefore need something that they it shouldn't push someone who is not at risk to become high risk, because it's there. It should be able to save that person who would have got an HIV, regardless of having interventions that are working. But again, they are getting HIV because we're seeing many infections already. So Lenacapavir will go a long way in curbing these avoidable infections for those who are not able to use the already existing methods. And like we've always said, it's a toolbox, like for HIV. People should have choices. I may try Len today, and then after 6 months, I say I want the oral preparation. I want on-demand PrEP. I want cabotegravir for 2 months, and so on. So the more options we have, the better. But we are glad that we have an intervention that someone can forget about for 6 months, only twice a year, and then you're able to get protection from HIV. So thank you so much for listening, and thank you for the interest in hearing more about these results.
Thank you so much, Dr. Flavia. This is a very significant study and quite an important tool in so many ways in the HIV fight, but also in securing our younger people. I think we actually need to meet. We've been doing a study on self-injection and the norms of a large cohort of over 2,000 people, and whether around self-injection, whether it empowers people. That was the main thing, empowers women and increases their agency, especially younger women. And I'm sure there's a lot to learn from that work, assuming this is to be rolled out, what will be the options, including a lot of learning on where do women who get the self-injection, where do they get the injection from, and when they inject and they continue, etc. So I have work which is funded by the Gates Foundation for a study called ICANN that we've just completed in Mayuge, Igango, Yam, and other places. Thank you so much. And Benjamin, do you have anything you want to put on the screen? Remember, thank you for coming, and thank you, team, and Flavia, always welcome back to Soget's Forum. And we hope once you have these commodities, we can work with you to scale them up in some high risk populations, including in Eastern Uganda. So receive a certificate of appreciation from Soget's Forum from me as chairperson. Thank you so much, Flavia. And thank you for the good studies. Members have a great
Thank
evening.
you for the certificate.
Thank you. And please share the slides with Benja, and in a form that he could share with those asking for them, including myself. Thank you, and have a lovely evening. Bye-bye.
Bye. Thank you.